Hello, and thanks for stopping by. It goes without saying that London is packed with all manner of world famous landmarks. Everything from the Tower of London and Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace, the London Eye, and much, much more. There's one particular point of interest though, which, despite having been around for countless centuries, tends to get overlooked nowadays, even though it used to be one of the city's most celebrated landmarks. A curious object known as the London Stone. You'll find the London Stone tucked away in its own custom-made cabinet at 111 Cannon Street, just across from Cannon Street Station. Compared to other London landmarks, it's tiny, a block of oolitic limestone measuring just 53 centimetres long, 43 centimetres wide, and 30 centimetres high. Hardly a rival to Nelson's Column. However, so integral is this stone to the very fabric of London, it's feared the city itself would face collapse were this block to ever disappear. The London Stone as it appears today is a mere fragment of what it once was, a stoic chunk that's been whittled down by the ravages of time. In years gone by, it formed part of a larger structure, a distinctive monolith which was originally sited in the middle of the road. Back then, by the way, Cannon Street was known as Candlewick Street, Cannon being a corruption of this old name. It has nothing to do with artillery. In 1578, an early French travel writer named Monsieur L. Grenade described the London Stone as being 3 foot high, 2 foot wide, and 1 foot thick, whilst the famous early chronicler of London, John Stow, writing 20 years later, stated that the stone is, quote, fixed in the ground very deep, fastened with bars of iron, and otherwise so strongly set that if carts do run against it through negligence, the wheels be broken and the stone itself unshaken. Monsieur Grenade and John Stow's descriptions are far from the first mentions of the London Stone though. By the time they were writing about it in the 16th century, it was already considered an ancient landmark, and the stone was deemed important enough to be included on some of the earliest detailed maps of the city. John Stow claimed the earliest written accounts of the London Stone had appeared in a 10th century book, which had been presented to King Athelstan by Christchurch, Canterbury, although unfortunately there's no surviving evidence of this supposed manuscript. However, we do know that the very first Lord Mayor of London, who took on the role in the year 1189, was named Henry Fitz-Elwyn Londonstone, stone spelt in those days as Stane. Londonstone being a common surname in the 12th century, which was adopted by folk who resided close to the famous landmark. Despite its long history though, no past chroniclers of London, or indeed archaeologists today, can be sure of when the London Stone first arrived in the city, or what its original intended purpose was, similar, in a way, to the mystery surrounding Stonehenge. The most fanciful legend, conjured up by Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century, suggests it was brought here from the ancient city of Troy by the mythical King Brutus, whilst another fable claims the stone was installed by King Lud, after which the city was called London by turning tongues. A more plausible theory is that it was the Romans who introduced the London Stone for use as a marker to which all distances to and from Londinium could be measured, similar to the manner in which King Charles Island, just south of Trafalgar Square, is now used to denote the capital's official centre. Although the London Stone is not known to have borne any Latin inscriptions, this idea does make some sense, as it sits on what would have been the approximate route of Watling Street, and was also close to the southern end of Ermine Street, which ran along what's now Bishopsgate, both of which were major highways in Roman Britain. Having said that, some believe that the stone, which according to tests run in 2016 was quarried in the Cotswolds, although earlier studies suggest Rutland, was already in place when the Romans arrived, and was possibly used as an importance marker by early Britons, or even as an altar for Druid worship, as suggested by William Blake, who in his epic work Jerusalem wrote, "Where Albion slept beneath the fatal tree, and the Druid's golden knife rioted in human gore, in offerings of human life, they groaned aloud on London stone." John Stow also stated it was likely the stone once served a commercial purpose, a meeting spot where loans could be arranged and paid off at designated times. There is at least one recorded incident of the stone being involved in something of a business capacity. In 1671, a batch of spectacles, which had been made in a shop on Cannon Street, not the optician shown here I hasten to add, were deemed by the Guildhall as being bad and deceitful, and so the order was given to have the dodgy merchandise smashed to pieces upon the London stone. It's been claimed that, during the medieval era, the stone was of such symbolic importance, newly crowned monarchs were expected to lay their hand upon the landmark as a means of asserting their authority. There's no evidence such ceremonies were ever conducted, although in 1450, the London stone was famously acknowledged by Jack Cade, the leader of a rebellion against King Henry VI, who, upon storming the capital, tapped the monument with his sword and audaciously declared that he was now lord of this city. So notorious was this incident, Shakespeare included it in Henry VI Part 2, in which he has Jack Cade say, "Now is Mortimer lord of this city, and here, sitting upon London stone, I charge and command that, of the city's cost, the pissing conduit run nothing but claret wine this first year of our reign." The conduit referred to here, in case you're wondering, was a pipe which once carried fresh water into the city. It's commemorated by this plaque on Cheapside. I'm sure it would have been quite something to see wine gushing, or as Shakespeare puts it, pissing along it. It's no surprise Shakespeare included the London stone in his play, because by the Elizabethan era, the monument had certainly become something of an early tourist attraction, as demonstrated in Samuel Rowland's 1608 poem, A Strange Sighted Traveller, which includes the lines, "An honest country fool, being gentle bred, was by an odd conceited humour led, to travel and some English fashion see, with such strange sights as here at London be. Great Tall steeple, and the Royal Exchange, the Boss at Billingsgate, and the London stone, and Whitehall the monstrous great whale's bone." When the Great Fire consumed the city in 1666, it would appear the London stone was badly damaged. So gutted was the area in fact, the monument's foundations were exposed, and it transpired they were much deeper than expected. This, along with the discovery of fragments of Roman flooring nearby, led Sir Christopher Wren to theorise that the London stone was indeed of Roman origin. He reckoned it may have once been located within a larger Roman building of some sort. Sadly, it would appear the stone's old foundations were chiselled away in the late 1860s, when tunnelling was carried out for the Metropolitan District Railway, now the District and Circle lines, the route of which passes directly beneath Cannon Street. In the wake of the Great Fire, a shelter of sorts was placed over the stone, as mentioned in its revealing report from July 1741. A carman and a drayman, contending for the way in Cannon Street, made a shift between them to throw down the little building that covers London stone, and to pull the said stone out of the earth. This being presently known, great numbers of people flocked to see it. This insight suggests the London stone had become something of an obstruction to traffic, so it's perhaps no coincidence then that just a year later, in 1742, the remains were relocated to the south side of Cannon Street, close to the corner of Dowgate Hill. Meanwhile, St Swithen's Church, which had stood opposite the stone since the 13th century, but was destroyed in the Great Fire, was rebuilt by Sir Christopher Wren. So closely associated were St Swithin's and the London stone in fact, their names were often combined when referring to addresses or the neighbourhood in general, as demonstrated in this rather disturbing extract from March 1757, when a vagrant, previously banished from the area, was detected in the parish of St Swithin, London Stone, He was ordered to be whipped publicly in the above parish, which was accordingly done, with notice given him that if he returned as a vagrant, he would, as a convict, be transported to His Majesty's plantations in America for 7 years. Despite there being a widely held superstition that London would fall if this famous little stone were to ever disappear, the London stone eventually came to be considered a nuisance by some, possibly because it blocked the street and attracted gawpers, and in the late 18th century, plans were made to have it removed altogether. Fortunately, a local printer named Mr. Malden stepped in to have the landmark saved, which he achieved by having the stone shifted to the north side of Cannon Street and set against the wall of St. Swithen's. This was carried out in 1798, and the stone remains in the same position today, even though the church no longer exists. When the stone was first incorporated into St. Swithin's, it sat within a relatively unguarded alcove, the purpose being to leave it as far as possible in its original simplicity. In 1869 though, the church wardens agreed to commission an ornamental covering with a grille, which would allow the London stone to remain visible to the public, but beyond the reach of mischief. Sadly, St. Swithin's was destroyed during the Blitz, although miraculously, the London stone, in a manner befitting its mythical status, managed to survive, and it remained at the bomb site for over 2 decades. Then, in the early 1960s, the ruins were cleared to make way for an office block. This incorporated the London stone's cabinet, and over the following years, the new building in which it sat accommodated numerous businesses, including a bank, a branch of W.H. Smith, and a sports shop. In 2016, the site was once again redeveloped, and whilst this work was being carried out, the London stone was put on temporary display inside the Museum of London. London's oldest landmark was returned to Cannon Street in 2018, complete with a fancy new case, from which the mysterious little object will no doubt keep watch over the city for many more centuries to come. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at what's possibly London's oldest landmark, and as always, I'd love to hear your own thoughts. Have you had the chance to see the London stone yourself? Who do you think put it there? And what do you reckon its original purpose was? Please be sure to let me know in the comments. If you haven't yet subscribed to Rob's London, then I'd appreciate it very much if you could please consider doing so, as this, along with clicking the bell icon to receive notifications, will ensure that you don't miss out whenever I publish a new video. Plus, of course, it'd be wonderful to have you along. If you're feeling extra generous, you can also support my work with a tip via either my Ko-fi account, which I'll link below, or the YouTube thanks button, which appears as a heart icon beneath the video. Any such financial donations are of course greatly appreciated, and they really do help go towards creating content. Anyway, on that note, thanks again for watching friends. Stay well, and please be sure to stay tuned.